And let's stay in Ramallah and bring in Xavier Abouid, who's a former advisor to the Palestinian Liberation Organization. Good to speak to you again, Xavier. The way this has been described, it sounds like what the Israeli Security Cabinet has done. I know this needs yet to be ratified, but from what our correspondent said, that's a formality. What it's done is it's unilaterally ripped up the Oslo Accords. Now, is it allowed to do that? Just rip them up? Are there no repercussions for that?
Good morning, Neil. You have said it. For many years, we have heard the same question. When do you think that the Oslo Agreement will be over? When do you think that the two-state solution will be over? And the international community kind of waits for some sort of symbolic response. And I think the Israeli cabinet gave the response to the Oslo Agreement yesterday. Now, it's been a construction. It's been for a while. And I think, Neil, it's very important to remember that only a few months ago, the Israeli government was under huge pressure. And there was talk about sanctions in many European capitals and other places because of the Israeli systematic violation of international law. Because many countries have realized that what Israel is doing here in the occupied Palestinian territory has an effect outside. But yet, we have the talk of the Board of Peace, Resolution Security Council Resolution 2803, almost or virtually all the pressure that was mounted on Israel was lifted. And now the Israeli government is confident enough to tell the whole world that the Oslo Agreement is over.
If this is illegal, does the UN Security Council not have not even a desire, an obligation to intervene? And would that be undermined by a US veto, in your opinion?
This is not just illegal, it's a consolidation of a war crime. And when you are talking about annexation, it's what the Rome Statute refers to as a crime of aggression. Now, the Security Council has an obligation to act, but it has had an obligation to act for the past 78 years. It's not something new when it comes to the Security Council. We have an issue with its composition and with the veto right that regularly the US, in almost 50 times throughout the years, they have made use of their veto right in order to allow Israel to continue with this culture of impunity. What we are facing, it's something that goes beyond, I think it's very important to say it. It's something that goes way beyond the idea that Israeli settlers will be able to go after certain landowners in Palestine in order to buy their property. Now, for example, according to what they are saying, if Israel says that in the center of the old city of Bethlehem or Nablus or Hebron, there is a place, a house that is 300 years old. And perhaps that house once was owned, or they claim that there was a Jew living there. Just like they do in occupied East Jerusalem, they will be able to move inside and to take over that house. That's basically what they are saying. So when they talk about getting engaged in areas A and B, which is about 1/3 of the occupied West Bank for water, environmental, or heritage, archaeological aspects, what they are saying is very clear. We have control over the whole of the territory.
If you look at what Russia's doing in Ukraine, it has seized Ukrainian land in a violent manner. Isn't the same thing happening in the occupied West Bank, just without the same level of violence and certainly without the same level of attention? But if you make a comparison that the end result is land being taken, are we going to see the same kind of opposition come from, for example, Western Europe by taking action?
Neil, we are not going to see the same kind of response. The European Union, which is Israel's main trade partner, is complicit. What we are facing today is that the Israeli government realizes that they are going to continue enjoying a culture of impunity for what they are doing. This is an exercise that has been taking years. If I take you 20 years ago, Neil, when there were some prospects of final status negotiations between Israel and Palestine, the only talk that that Israel was talking in terms of archaeology was actually in East Jerusalem, in the old city. In the Camp David negotiation, July 2000, there was some talk about whether Israel was able to continue archaeological excavations while the Muslim Awqaf was going to continue the status quo over Al-Aqsa Mosque compound. Today, what the scenario for Al-Aqsa Mosque compound has been actually diminished, and it's all over the occupied Palestinian territory. This is precisely a consequence of international community, not only the US. It's very easy to hide behind the US. It's international community as a whole, particularly Western powers, that have acted with double standards. And I can tell you, I can assure you, today the Israeli president, Mr. Herzog, who was quoted in the International Court of Justice for inciting genocide, he's being welcomed by the Australian government in Australia. Other leaders in Europe have been opening their skies, France, Italy, Greece, and others, in order for a wanted ICC fugitive like Benjamin Netanyahu to continue traveling worldwide. In other words, what the decision the Israeli government came out with yesterday cannot be explained only because this is an electoral year in Israel, because they will continue presenting those kind of initiatives in order to gain more votes. But it can only be explained understanding that this is free of charge for the Israeli government.
Xavier, good to speak to you. Appreciate your time. Xavier Abouid, former advisor to the Palestinian Liberation Organization.